It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Israel's Prime Minister warns of a wide-scale attack in Gaza as ministers approve plans to seize the whole of the Strip and move the majority of the population. Celebrating victory in Europe 80 years on, and the veterans who helped deliver an end to the Second World War. A royal salute, the UK Armed Forces, their NATO allies and soldiers from Ukraine parade past the King. A flypast in front of the royal family, marking the start of 4 days of commemorative events. Plus, the parties on the streets. We see the people celebrating with friends and family, just as the country did 80 years ago. And lights, camera, tariffs. Donald Trump says Hollywood is dying a very fast death and threatens a 100% levy on movies made outside of the U.S. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. 19 months after the war in Gaza began, Israel's government has approved plans to capture the whole of the territory and remain there for an unspecified length of time. Benjamin Netanyahu said that this time his forces would not launch raids and then leave, but the opposite. Gazans today spoke of their despair at the announcement. One Israeli official said Gaza's population would need to move south. And this comes as the IDF said that they had carried out fresh attacks on targets belonging to the Houthi regime in Yemen. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle is in Jerusalem, and a warning. His report includes images of the body bags of victims of an Israeli airstrike.
These tanks in southern Israel today are getting ready to move into Gaza. Israel's war, almost 19 months long now, is entering a new phase with perhaps permanent consequences for the 2 million Palestinians that live there. The Israeli cabinet has said it will call up thousands of reservists and intensify the fighting to conquer large parts of Gaza and then occupy them.
We decided to take intensified action in Gaza. That was the Chief of Staff's recommendation, to move, as he said, toward the defeat of Hamas. He believes this will also help us rescue the hostages, and I agree with him. We are not letting up on this effort, and we will not give up on anyone.
How long Israeli troops will remain in the parts of Gaza is still to be determined, an official has told Sky News. But some senior cabinet members are already saying it will be permanent.
The operation will include a broad offensive that includes moving a majority of the population of the Gaza Strip. This is in order to protect it in a sterile area from Hamas. Continued airstrikes, the elimination of terrorists, and the dismantling of infrastructure. We will repeat the model carried out in Rafah in other areas of the Gaza Strip.
At least 17 people were killed in airstrikes on Sunday night. They were buried today. Fighting in Gaza resumed in March when Israel broke the ceasefire after a 2-month pause. Since then, no hostages have been released, and Hamas has not been defeated. Food is running out and fuel supplies are extremely low. Our team filmed these queues in Gaza City. Israel says there is still enough aid in Gaza to go around, but the evidence on the ground is of desperation. Israel says it is now considering letting aid in and looking at ways to distribute it, but no plan has been revealed and no timeline set.
We can no longer bear the pressure, the war, the killing, the death and bombing. We can no longer endure anything. Hunger, destruction, displacement from one place to another, every day in a different place. Frankly, we need a solution. We want a truce. We want a long-term truce so that we can rest, so that our people can rest.
What more can happen? Children have died, children have been displaced, children have gone hungry, homes have been destroyed. What more can happen?
President Trump is due to visit Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE in 10 days' time. He is not currently scheduled to visit Israel. Israeli officials say there is a window for Hamas to agree a new deal before Trump arrives in the region. If not, they will launch the new offensive and drive Gazans out of the north, perhaps for good. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Jerusalem.
And here's Alistair with the latest.
I think a deal is very unlikely, and I think the offensive is almost certain. Negotiations to try and broker a new ceasefire have not really gone anywhere since Israel resumed its fighting in Gaza back in March. And I have to say there are no signs of a breakthrough in the coming days. But Israel says that there is now a window before Donald Trump visits the region. He's not visiting Israel at the moment, incidentally. So we'll see whether any diplomatic progress can be made in that short period of time. But the Israelis seem determined to increase the numbers of Israeli soldiers in Gaza, to increase the intensity of their fighting in Gaza, and to go into large swathes, if not all of Gaza, and this time hold that territory and occupy that territory. Of course, in the short term, that is designed to put pressure on Hamas, but Benjamin Netanyahu last week made it very clear that the ultimate goal now for Israel is the total destruction of Hamas. That angered many of the hostage families who now see that their loved ones are no longer the priority. And we are seeing members of the Israeli cabinet, the finance minister Bezalel Smotrich today, saying Israelis will have to get used to the idea that Israel will now occupy Gaza permanently. Now, we'll see whether or not that does come to bear, but certainly the announcement today about this expansion in operations suggests that that is a road that the Israelis are willing to go down if it means the only way of destroying Hamas totally.
It's been a day of pomp and ceremony as tens of thousands of people have gathered to remember VE Day 80 years ago. That day marked a victory in Europe when people across Britain, including a young future Queen Elizabeth, flooded on the streets to celebrate Nazi Germany's surrender in the Second World War. Well, today her son, King Charles, saluted more than 1,000 military personnel who had marched to the palace from Westminster. Our home editor, Jason Farrell, was watching.
The spirit of 1945 returned to London, beginning at Churchill's statue and his speech that marked the end of the war.
I say that in the long years to come, not only will the people of this island, but of the world, wherever the bird of freedom chirps in human hearts, look back to what we have done and they will say, do not despair. Do not yield to violence and tyranny. March straight forward and die, if need be, unconquered.
Even the finest of actors could never match the resonance those words must have had 80 years ago. And a spectacular military parade could never capture how it must have felt when crowds poured into these streets to celebrate the war's end. But 1,300 service personnel certainly put on a show. Marching from a flag-draped cenotaph in Westminster to the Queen Victoria Memorial outside Buckingham Palace. Greeted by the royal household, its most junior members alongside the most senior veterans of the war. And the King standing to salute as the parade passed. Representatives of the Commonwealth joined the ceremony. And for soldiers from a country currently at war in Europe, there was spontaneous applause. The living memory of World War II is fading, but ahead of the parade, one of those preparing to lead it said this moment in history should always be remembered.
These things, of course, fade into history in terms of living memory. I think it's important that we continue to remember and commemorate it. I suspect we probably won't do so on the same scale or in the same ways. But as we saw with the centenary of the First World War, there is always the need to educate new generations as to how we've got to where we are today.
For all their finery and glinting armour, the immaculately dressed soldiers on this parade know that the thing that makes it special is the presence of former soldiers, the men and women who can say, "I was there."
Just a few hundred remain. Among them, Bernard Morgan, 100 years old, the youngest RAF sergeant to land in Normandy on D-Day, here speaking to Princess Catherine. For nearly everyone in the crowd, the story is instilled in them from previous generations.
He worked in the RAF, so I want to follow his footsteps and join the RAF when I'm older.
Yeah. His granddad was one of the very first air cadets in 1938, and he's always spoken to Zan about the air cadets.
Afterwards, 30 war veterans aged 98 to 100 had tea with the King and Queen at Buckingham Palace, where small talk about the euphoria of VE Day came with revelations from the King.
Did you do a conga?
Oh, everything.
I remember doing congas with my grandmother round and round the house. Nobody does a conga. It was such fun.
The oldest veteran here, Henry Ducker, was serving in Italy on VE Day.
The CEO came down from wherever he was and said, "Lads, the war's over." All who started to go, "Well, we're going home at last." I made many promises, but now we're going to go home. It's been wonderful, yeah. And I feel they put such a lovely show on for the ones who didn't come back.
It's the first landmark VE Day, where no one on this balcony was there in 1945, waving to the crowds. With each year, there are fewer of us who remember the moment this street became a sea of joy. But still, this spectacular salute to those who fell and those who came back matters. As the living thread to the past thins out, the lessons of the Second World War are no less important. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, the celebrations today didn't end with the ceremony in central London. Street parties were arranged in towns and cities and in Downing Street, where the Prime Minister hosted guests, including veterans. Our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, went to one event in the military garrison town of Catterick.
Up and down the country, in groups, big and small, this is how communities did their bit. This is Catterick Garrison in North Yorkshire, a place still synonymous with the British Army, honouring those impromptu street parties of 1945, something that is, for a very few, still a vivid memory.
I was just 12 when my mum turned around and said, your daddy'll be coming home any day. You know, oh yes. It's a memorial, really.
For those as young as Marjorie was back then, this is about more than a history lesson.
Celebrating VE Day is a really special moment for everyone to remember and reflect on those who have died saving us.
It's important to celebrate these sort of days and remembering the people who've served for us.
The designated head of the German state signed the...
To the echoes of one Prime Minister, who better to judge the cake contest
this table is ration beds,
than another? This one, the local MP. He declined another of the vintage attractions.
There'll be blue birds over.
No such hazards for the current occupant of number 10, hosting a street party in Downing Street. Elsewhere, at Cardiff Castle, there was a festive feel to the commemorations and an attempt to recreate that 1940s vibe.
VE Day would have been a very mixed emotions for many people. Joy at the war being over, but sorrow that their relatives wouldn't be coming back.
The freedom that we enjoy today is because of the sacrifice those men and women made all those years ago.
It's good also to remember the people who lost their lives at war and the people who fought in the British Army in the war who risked their lives to save our country, so I think it's important to remember that.
One of the most striking locations for a street party, and right at the centre of events today was aboard HMS Belfast on the Thames. And for the man in charge of the gun salute, a very personal moment.
It's not just being on the Belfast or firing the guns. The fact that it's VE80 has an enormous significance for me. My grandfather joined the Navy at the ripe old age of 14. I'm here representing him and his memory as well.
The stories of VE Day live on for so many. For its significance today, this is how Britain remembered. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Well, undoubtedly, the most dramatic part of today's events in central London was the Flypast. And on board one of those military aircraft was our correspondent, Siobhan Freeman-Powell.
I'm currently at Brize Norton, an RAF airbase, about to get on this plane, which will soon be flying over London as part of the VE Day 80th anniversary.
It's the main event, marking the first of a 4-day celebration and the first Flypast for Flight Lieutenant Rob Hanson.
It's a great privilege to be able to take part in this Flypast today, and hopefully it was a fitting tribute for all those people that gave the ultimate sacrifice to secure our freedom, what we know today.
And in return, they secured 80 years of peace, making it possible for adversaries to become allies.
So today we were doing a Flypast over London for the VE80 celebrations, and for me as a German it's a special honour to be able to do this, to be allowed to do this, and yeah, because of our history, but you can see now how far we came, that the German can fly an A400 over London, which is absolutely amazing.
So we're strapped in now, we're just about to take off. I'm feeling very nervous but excited. We've been told that it's the perfect day for a Flypast, but I've also been warned about sickness, so hopefully my stomach can stay strong enough until we get to London.
Before the Flypast, the fleet must join the formation over the North Sea.
1,000.
With jets so close, it feels surreal.
Oh. We're close to London now. We're only around 1,000 feet above ground, and you can tell because now the flight's starting to get slightly bumpy.
As the landmarks of London appear before us, every move becomes calculated.
15 seconds.
Flying so fast and so close requires intense focus, especially with the King watching, alongside veterans and crowds gathered below.
So we've just completed the Flypast, going over some of London's most iconic landmarks, being surrounded by the RAF's most iconic and powerful military aircraft. It really was an incredible moment, but it all happened so quickly that if you blink, you missed it.
A show of unity worth celebrating, a tribute to peace, and respects paid to the fallen. Siobhan Freeman-Powell, Sky News.
To politics now, and when MPs return to Parliament tomorrow, among them will be Sarah Pochin, the 5th Reform UK MP, who won the Runcorn and Helsby by-election by the narrowest of narrow margins. Well, Reform's triumphant showing in last week's local and mayoral elections has many in Westminster asking whether the government will rethink its controversial cut to winter fuel payments to try and regain support. Well, Sky's chief political correspondent John Craig is in Westminster for us. And John, there's growing disquiet over the winter fuel policy, which was always controversial and divisive. Do you think we can expect any movement on this from Rachel Reeves?
Not immediately, but there could well be a tweak or autumn budget. These will not have to see the Labour and the
Apologies, they were having issues with the line to John Craig, who was talking about the government possibly looking at the winter fuel, the cut to winter fuel payments. We will try to get John Craig back a little later in the programme. Let's go to Hollywood now. And Donald Trump has threatened to impose 100% tariffs on movies made outside of the US, claiming America's movie industry is dying a very fast death. Unions here warn the levy could be a knockout blow for the British film industry and are calling on the government to defend the sector. Sky's US correspondent Martha Kellner reports.
In Tinseltown, the bright lights are dimming on the film industry. Production here has fallen 40% in the last decade.
Something's coming.
Films that might once have been made in Hollywood, now being created in Britain, Ireland and Canada. Jobs are down and profits squeezed. The president approaching this problem with a familiar reaction: tariffs. A 100% tariff on all foreign-made films, he says.
I'm not just blaming other nations, but other nations, a lot of them, have stolen our movie industry. And I'm saying if they're not willing to make a movie inside the United States, then we should have a tariff on movies that come in.
At this LA prop shop, business has never been so slow. The globalisation of the industry a factor.
So many productions are not just leaving the state, but also leaving the country as well. We can all agree that we want more filming to stay in the country or to help promote jobs and that sort of stuff. But you also don't want to do something to hurt it. So I don't know how you would implement that.
It's unclear whether the tariffs would be applied retroactively to films like Spider-Man 4, currently in production in England. The international film industry is now worth more than $1 billion to the UK. Executives are warning that Trump's levies could wipe it out.
That would have a devastating impact for jobs in the UK. Tens of thousands of freelancers work on film production. They've had a bit of a torrid time over the last few years during COVID and since COVID, and it would be another body blow to the UK industry.
Uncertainty about how these tariffs will work means stocks are sliding at all the major production companies. The likes of Sony, Netflix, Disney, Paramount, they're all already being impacted. When Trump became president, he made his friend Sylvester Stallone an ambassador to Hollywood, alongside Mel Gibson and Jon Voight, pledging to make the movie business great again. Skeptics wonder if sweeping tariffs are the magic stardust this fading industry needs. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
The wartime capital of Sudan has been hit by a drone attack by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces for the second time in just 2 days. The strikes targeted strategic warehouses in Port Sudan, with the country's energy and oil minister describing it as a terrorist act. The city has served as an interim seat for the government since the war between the military and the RSF began more than 2 years ago. Our Africa correspondent, Yusrael Bagir, has the latest.
We're in Sudan's wartime capital, Port Sudan, and you're seeing smoke behind me from what is the second RSF strike on the sanctuary city in the last 2 days, this time reportedly hitting a fuel depot on the outskirts of the city. People here are extremely scared. They're concerned that the 2 years of security they found here is being breached by the second strike in a row. Yesterday, we saw RSF strike on the airport. 5 suicide drones, the authorities say, hit the military airbase within the vicinity of the only international airport in the country, putting it out of service. And now, though flights have resumed, there's a massive delay in getting people out of the country. There is a sense that this is an escalation in the war. We've seen drone strikes by the RSF increase in number after the army recaptured the capital city, Khartoum. This is hugely significant. It shows that this new wartime capital is not safe from the RSF, and it also shows that they have the capacity to cause serious damage in areas outside the range of their traditional territory.
To Westminster Politics now, and we can speak to John Craig. John, growing disquiet over cuts to winter fuel policy. Do you think we can expect any amendment on this from Rachel Reeves?
Not immediately, certainly, but if there is going to be either a change or a U-turn, it'll come in the autumn budget. But MPs will not have to wait long this week to see, for Labour and the Conservatives, the grim reality of last Thursday's results. At 2:30, when the House meets after the bank holiday, Sarah Pochin, the winner of the Runcorn-Helsby by-election, will take her seat, no doubt in a very theatrical performance with her leader, Nigel Farage. But the Prime Minister, after a very jolly street party in Downing Street, well, he's been brought down to earth already. He's had a phone call with President Macron, where they've been discussing the grim prospects in Ukraine, Gaza, also what Number 10 is calling irregular migration. That's the boats crossing the channel. Then, of course, there will be the cabinet inquest, really, into what went wrong for Labour last week. Likely to be a political cabinet, and that's when they'll talk about what they're going to do about winter fuel, because there is a real clamour from Labour MPs for a change of plan here. It was hugely damaging in that by-election and in other elections. There may be discussion about whether Sir Keir Starmer really should have gone to campaign. In the House, the main business is a debate on the VE Day 80th anniversary. No great controversy there, but 6 o'clock, the regular meeting, if it goes ahead on a Tuesday, normally on a Monday, of the PLP, the Parliamentary Labour Party, if it takes place, well, that could be brutal because, of course, Labour MPs are furious, not just the so-called usual suspects on the left, but many, including many ministers, about winter fuel pay by the Chancellor, tax measures which have proved greatly unpopular. One Labour MP summed it up at the weekend, talking about Labour's slogan, "We don't need a plan for change, we need a change of plan." The mood on the Labour backbenches is pretty ugly. It's Reform UK celebrating their new MP.
It'll be an interesting day in Westminster tomorrow. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, in Westminster. John, thank you. Let's get the latest sport now from Sky Sports News with Jess.
Hello there, good evening to you all. Now, Trent Alexander-Arnold has confirmed that he will leave the Premier League champions Liverpool at the end of the season. The 26-year-old, who has been at the club since he was 6 years old, is out of contract at the end of June. A verbal agreement has been reached for the England international to join Real Madrid on a free transfer. And it's been a hugely successful time for him at Anfield, you have to say, having won 2 Premier League titles as well as the Champions League back in 2019.
It is a massive decision. He's been at the club since he was 6 years of age, whatever it be. And he sees it as another experience. You know, he's won everything at Liverpool. He's won everything. I don't know. It's like a personal choice. You know, it was me and other ex-Liverpool players would stay.
Our Champions League hopefuls Nottingham Forest picked up a valuable point at Crystal Palace. After a goalless first half, Palace were awarded a penalty after Matt Sells brought down Tyreek Mitchell. Abira Eza took it and scored. Cool penalty from him. But their lead only lasted 4 minutes. Marilla equalised for Forest via that deflection for his second goal of the season. In the WSL, Arsenal missed a chance to secure second place after they were beaten 4-2 by Brighton. Well, Brighton went ahead after this fantastic strike from Frank Kirby. Just over 10 minutes later, the scores were level. Caitlin Ford with the equaliser. How about this, though, just before the break from Jelena Jankovic. She put Brighton back in front with this. She added a second in the second half before Kiko Saike scored Brighton's fourth. Mariona Caldente managed to pull the goal back for Arsenal in stoppage time, but it wasn't enough. 4-2 the final score.
When we go and play this game, this is not what we're expecting and it's not what we're about. So I think it's definitely a shock. I think they get full reward for the chances they create, the 4 goals they get.
Tu Snooker and Zhao Xingtong made history by becoming the first player from China to win the World Championship after beating Mark Williams. The 28-year-old won by 18 frames to 12, despite a spirited comeback attempt from Williams at the Crucible. Now to what could be a big blow for the British and Irish Lions ahead of their tour of Australia. Lions captaincy contender Caelan Doris is a doubt after suffering a shoulder injury that requires surgery. The extent of his injury won't be known until after the procedure, but this is significant news, with Andy Farrell set to announce his Lions squad on Thursday. OK, that's all the sport for now. We'll be back a little bit later with much more reaction to the news that Trent Alexander-Arnold will leave Liverpool at the end of the season. See you soon.
That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. And tonight, we're joined by Associate Editor for the Financial Times, Stephen Bush, and former Conservative Special Advisor, Salma Shah. Welcome both. Among the stories we'll be discussing this on the front of The Guardian. Number 10 to rethink fuel payment cut as local election losses alarm MPs. We'll be right back.